We're here at Carleton University for the EU Strategic Partnerships Workshop, and it's my pleasure to be with Arkady Moshes, the Program Director at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs in Helsinki, and an expert in EU-Russian relations. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Could you explain for us why the EU designated Russia a strategic partner, and is this a relationship of choice or by necessity?
Well, I think in the 90s, it was very natural, both for Russia and the European Union, to view the future of this relationship as a partnership at least. In fact, what was behind was a vision of a relationship of quasi-integration, something very close. Why it happened, objectively speaking, in the field of economics, the EU and Russia, they need each other. In the energy relationship, it seems absolutely natural that these two entities would have a close relationship. So I think the idea was based on the mutual economic complementarity, A, but also B, on the fact that Russia was perceived as a European country and perceived itself as a European country. To think of this relationship as something really, really very promising and very big and very enriching for both, that's why it was pretty much natural to come up with the idea of strategic partnership.
What changed in the relationship over the last decade?
Well, the turning point in the EU-Russia relationship was 2004. There were certain things that happened internally in Russia which made the leadership essentially shelve, if not totally abandon, the previous policy of the so-called Russia's European choice. Second, the EU enlargement played a role because a number of EU new member states had a much less, I would say, unproblematic view of Russia. But also certain things happened in the common EU-Russian neighborhood. And primarily we should speak here about the Orange Revolution in Ukraine. Russia diagnosed the Orange Revolution as something conspired elsewhere and imported into Ukraine from the West. And as such, the European Union became an actor, or became to be perceived as an actor in Russia that would be proselytizing on Russia's canonical territory, the actor that would like to try to weaken Russian influence in the common neighborhood. So the turning point was 2004. And after that, the relationship the strategic partnership was gradually unraveling. And the negative trends, the conflict trends were prevailing in the relationship. So the Ukraine 2014 was a culmination of the trend witnessed before and not a break of the trend. And this is something very important. So unfortunately, the EU for a very long time was in denial of the negative process. It tried vigorously to revitalize the relationship by means of what was called the Partnership for Russia's Modernization initiative. But those attempts, frankly, were futile because Russia was not willing to view itself as a European country, as a country that which even in future would be willing to adopt the European norms, rules, and standards. So in a way, the current problems, they were pre-programmed, I would say.
What does the relationship look like in the wake of the Ukraine crisis, and what will you be looking for going forward?
Well, at the moment, there is a crisis, and there's a full-scale crisis, and there's no need to try to minimize the scale of this crisis. The only thing which still works is certain parts of the economic exchange between the European Union and Russia. Nothing else does. There's no cooperation in the sphere of external security. There's practically there's little cooperation in the sphere of justice and home affairs. And the future does not look particularly promising. We have two scenarios at the moment. One, and they are both hinged on the future of the actual conflict inside Ukraine and over Ukraine. And one scenario is continuing confrontation. Confrontation may be a little bit too strong a word, but essentially it's a very problematic relationship where even the economic side of this relationship will not be developing smoothly. And more likely, if the conflict in Ukraine stays unresolved and there will be new phases of escalation, they will be followed by new phases of European economic sanctions and probably Russian counter-sanctions, and we will be dealing with a downward spiral. A more positive scenario is a return to economic pragmatism, but still not to the business as usual. If the conflict in Ukraine is resolved, and I emphasize here resolved and not just frozen, there will be a very strong incentive on both sides to maybe renegotiate the economic part of the package. But still, there will be less possibilities to mend fences and to fix the relationship, because Russia is now amidst its own economic crisis, which makes it less attractive for the EU business community as a potential partner. The trust at the level of political elites has been undermined. And plus, we should remember that those negative trends that I was talking about in the very beginning of this conversation, they're still there. And even if we kind of put the Ukrainian crisis in parentheses and try to take it out of the context, those old trends are still there. So unfortunately, even the more pragmatic interaction will be kind of less promising than it was even 2 years ago.
Mr. Moshes, I just want to thank you very much for your time and enjoy your conference.
Thank you again.